So sometimes we do live training, sometimes we do live questions, and sometimes we just do audio. And today I'm just doing audio. And that's typically when I want to walk, when I have things to say, and when I really don't want to like filter anything, right? And I don't run this channel per se to get more subscribers. Um, in fact, every time I would, how this channel used to function is when I would get subscribers, I would stop using it. Like that's how it functioned as a place where I did all my recordings and kept all my sort of not necessarily private thoughts, but things that I wasn't feeling like I had to censor. And so this is a big part of it, is just doing audio, talking about things that seem like random concepts, but they're not, right? And lately, obviously, there's this big so it's like when you get into the life imitates art, art imitates life, right? When you get into this statement, you're not making the statement in an isolated chamber. You're talking about the exposure to all the people watching Netflix, people of different intelligence levels, people with different socioeconomic backgrounds, you name it, and how that affects middle America, which isn't really a place anymore, right? Like when you look at Columbine, Colorado, or a lot of the things that happened and where they happened, um, it's almost like a lot of this fixation on program killers. If you ever look at Operation GCD or the um, Underclass podcast, Headless Giant, Cosmic Peach, Heidi Love. Try not to leave too many people out. Tim Constantine with Six Sensory. That's one I've just started kind of listening to. And then there's a lady that I just that does more cryptid investigations, which I've always found to be ridiculous. And I'm trying not to laugh at the notion. And the thing that opened up the venue to be able to look at this a little more critically, I don't know if I think critically is probably a stretch, but just to take amalgamate information and to go, okay, I'm at least receptive to listening to it without laughing, right? But there is a lot of documentation with this. But what I was going to say is when Sean Ryan actually had a good show, and they were trying in the early stages, and they were doing more of the UAP ufology stuff, but then they were being used as probably a Mossad sounding board. Like Sean Ryan's one of those people who's probably a agent provocateur, a Manchurian candidate, and doesn't even really know it, right? Like he's one of these people that, hey, just pay my bills, keep my kids fed, and hey, I'll show up. I can't tell if praise Jesus just in case, but I can't tell if I'm good or bad. But hey, some things we're not supposed to know, right? Or like Alex Jones coming to this profound realization of this holographic universe, trying to stay ahead of everybody as he's interviewing these people and trying to sound smart because he's this bloated fat fuck, right? Who's now ripped. He's a ripped, bloated fat fuck, right? I've been on both sides, every side too. So, but I've never looked or felt like I at least was on the lower scum level of Alex Jones. But I've always disliked him because I've always seen the propaganda behind him. So he can come out with this groundbreaking bullshit, right? And then next thing you know, he's putting on his persona. I mean, him painting rocks with Jesse Michaels and playing up the Fruit Loop game and almost seeming like he's gay. Like, look at that interview where Alex Jones is painting rocks with Jesse Michaels, and Jesse Michaels works for Peter Thiel. Tell me he's not in the club, in the group, in the propagandist group. Honestly, Alex Jones is a big put on. Bill Cooper saw through him. William Cooper, he 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 found he saw right through Alex Jones. He saw what a vile uh, POS Alex Jones really is, and he is to this day. And if you really want to know what he's all about, I'm not saying that ex-wives are the best people to, you know, to ask, but look at Alex Jones' ex-wife. You know, she actually seems like a decent person, um, whereas Alex Jones is fucking completely insane. He's a danger. He's a danger. Not to the Odd Fellows of the Good Old Boys Club. He's actually working as a propagandist, as disinformationalist. I firmly believe that. And I think when you like look at someone like Cliff High, who's also unaware that they're even doing this, but as long as they get their stuff, as long as they pay their bills, as long as they get, you know, a little audience and people listening to them and getting so easily brainwashed, right? And then starting to use their fucking nomenclature and their fucking word usage, word salad really is what it is. But eventually you're not going to follow anyone, right? You're going to take pieces of information that expand the intellect of said individual and then to realize that everything is an on-running operation. Everything is a program, especially you thinking that you are an individual. So this makes people really uncomfortable, right? Because they begin to protest this, and then in the quiet of the confines of who they are, the paracosm, if you will, they begin to realize that this is entirely true. Where did I get the idea? What was that quirky nuance that my mother laughed at? You know, the way my lip turns up, or, you know, or it looks, your gesture, grandma does that, you know, and you don't know why you did something and how that plays in as a hook to a certain element, a place in your life, right? So the big popular thing these days is going beyond this dimensional concept, interdimensional concept, going beyond time travel, right? We think we're purposefully advancing to this level of understanding where when you look at yourself and your life, you've actually degraded, right? Nothing's changed, right? It reminds me of Ready Player One, right? Where people think they're going somewhere, they think they're getting something done, they've uncovered something from the matrix, from inside of it, it has disclosed something outside, and then they were able to effectively free, right? Free people. It's the same fucking story of Wizard of Oz, it really is. And the truth is that, and even the idea of matrix or the conceptualization. So like concepts like Cinderella, like with John Wick, right? Alice in Wonderland. These types of themes are being revisited now, right? Along with a quasi pseudo disclosure, which is pointing and hinting at something that could be akin to the Hyperboreans' inner Earth, or possibly could be what we're thought of as and termed as fallen angels. And it's almost all leading to the fact that we are an amalgamated class of, so I mean, this type of thing where, you know, you look at a mixture of Australopithecus, Denisovian, Neanderthal. You look at all these postulates of human attempts, prior human attempts, right? And an amalgamation of all of these and more with engineered genetic traits that say you are being designed for a specific purpose, for a specific outcome, right? And even more so, we're going to design you and control you in the ways and allow information to trickle in through this zodiacal gematria driven subset, Mandelbrot set of information junction or exchange points, right, through dates, calendric cycles, that we're going to allow you the inception of this information to come into the pervading controlled field, right, to where this sphere of information is going to lead you to do the research and might I say, the heinous actions that we want to blame a point in time, like Nazism, the SS. You know, when the Reich is well established here, and you could even say that it was understood that the corporatization was already heavily underway, right? And that's what a lot of people don't understand about the North and the South, right? When you get into Washington, you get into really concepts that came a little later, Pierre Proudhon, um, and Jean-Jacques Rousseau, and like the social contract, and the fact that we can't really own land, and that even more so that we are discredited because we are considered goy. And so you get into bloodlines and you're going, wow, maybe it's true, right? But maybe there's a lot that was left out of the equation. So when you have beings that were designed to underperform, designed to tear apart, when you look at certain primates that do this type of thing, where they'll literally murder and tear the fuck out of, one of their family members, right? And there's very little grieving done. So, to me, you look at the woman who's got 10 kids, and the majority of those are sons, and most of them went off to war, if not all, and died. And she's able to be honored with her sacrifice and her contributions when the bitch never did shit. Sending your fucking teenage boys off to die and then calling yourself a patriot. So, I mean, when you look at the desensitization and the brainwash, this has been going on for a fuck of a long time, right? And there's nothing patriotic about it. There's needless, senseless wars, but now you have the corporate neo-feudalism where the government, so it's not that corporations have sunk their way into the government. It's that the government has always been a corporation, and now it's taking corporate moves, corporate maneuvers, with their possessing of 10% of Intel, right? And Lockheed, right? I mean, look at it. Take a closer look at it. JPL, right? The government's always been involved on a financial level because it is part of the centralized system. Cryptocurrency doesn't break anything free. What it does is it removes the requirement of there being a store of wealth or a stash of gold, right? That has a certain value. And even now, I'm telling you that this is just something that will come out slowly. But I'm going to tell you ahead of time that in the next 3 years, and I was right on it with graphene, the trucking industry, it hasn't even popped off yet what my claims were for the future. And I did this, I realized this about a decade ago, right? And started talking about this, is where the trucking industry is going to become more like Uber. It's going to break things down into even smaller loads and dispatch stations where people will essentially, it'll all be driven into, like, they'll be making jack shit for these deliveries. And then you see Uber has the all-female Uber, right? That's something that's never going to kick off. It'll happen in a few states, and then there'll be issues with this. It's going to create some discrepancy and some disparaging there. And all of this pushes toward automated, autonomous vehicles. And this leads into autonomous spacecraft, airplanes, you name it, right? So we're going into a full-on dystopic cycle within the next 3 years. But what's going to emerge is that diamonds, gold is going to be made far superior to the valuation of gold and diamonds that we see here now, right? That these natural precious stones and metals are actually going to lose their value, because on a molecular scale they have been improved exorbitantly for conductivity, use case, metallurgy, you name it. And it's going to lead it to some serious implications with the use of, when you're talking about Silicon Valley, you're talking about mining and other operations. Anyway, it's getting pretty hot in here. Kicking it off with a little walk. Started out with rice and beef liver this morning. Gonna do some more rice with some protein powder. And then after a 24-hour, I think I worked out at like, can't even remember when my workout actually took place yesterday, but it was in the later afternoon. So we're gonna work out again. But today we're gonna do some shoulders and arms, and however that comes to be. But I want to give it 24 hours because I did chest and back. And then if I got the place to myself, actually probably tomorrow or the next day, I'm going to see how I'm feeling and go back in and hit some back. I trained legs for about 2 months straight, and started to have a lot of hip and lower back problems. So I backed off of it a little bit. The calories are bringing up my quads. I naturally don't have an issue putting good quality mass on my legs. All the walking that I do, 2,000 miles over the last couple of years that I've put on. I've documented like 1,400 miles just indoor. And then many miles that I've walked. Other than that, I don't document it all anymore. I kind of know where I'm at. So I've got over 2,000 miles at this point. I don't know if it's well over 2,000 miles, but I gave up my iPhone, so I stopped tracking it, and the tracker for Samsung just isn't suitable. I couldn't find a good fitness tracker. I know they're out there, that just doesn't work for me. The reminders are annoying. I just don't really like, I gotta say it, I don't like Samsung after having this phone for over a year, the S24 Ultra. Unfortunately, it just doesn't have the features that I thought it was going to have. And I never use the DeX. The DeX is just kind of like stupid, really. Because you can do the casting, right? You can do the iPhone cast onto your smart TV. You can buy a smart TV for fucking $100 these days. I mean, it's ridiculous to even own something that's so bulky. And I know they're improving, but I'm not a big Samsung fan, but I think they have interesting products. But I think the iPhone is something that I would choose next time around. And who knows, maybe iPhone 17, 18, who knows, 16, maybe we'll still get into a 16. I have no idea. I just need something with a decent camera, but I would rather get another Insta360 camera, for that matter, before even switching up phones at all. And yeah, so the heat and the stagnancy is a thing, and then I have to keep the window closed because otherwise I'm talking right out into kind of almost like this weird acoustic alleyway where there's houses like right next to me where I'm like literally yelling out the window. It sounds like when I'm walking and passing by. So there's some psychotic people who've had like psychotic episodes that not from that, but people that are on meds with court dates and all that stuff. So I would rather not like disclose my information out the window, if you know what I mean. So I don't really have a good airflow through, and that is the only way to cool down this space. Actually, I do have a fan here that works really well, but then I already have a decreased sound quality here just using my headphones. Typically, this isn't so much of an issue if my son leaves his DJ sound equipment, his DJI sound equipment, but he was shooting some master videos, and he's pushing his sci-fi book right now, which I posted up on esotericprinciplesoflight.com .blogspot.com, and he's given out about 35 free copies of that digital book for review, trying to get some really good people that are really interested in sci-fi and want to pick apart his book and review it so that he can, get on Goodreads and other places and start his series of books, and he's a rock musician as well. I'm definitely dating myself by saying rock musician, but I don't know what else to say. There's some alternative and contemporary stylings. He's been a musician for about 20 years, going on 20 years. 18 years, like having a band, performing, competing, performing, and cutting tracks. And he does that very regularly now. So it's not something where he even has to practice playing all the time, but I'm sure once he got to a place where he's financially comfortable, he'd probably have his own studio, and he'd be playing and cutting tracks all the time. And one of his very good friends, who's in a band with him right now, runs the college recording studio department locally at a university, and is in fact he is able to do some really high quality type recordings with him. So, and this all leads into this whole matrix, the spectrum of sci-fi into the visual aspects of it, which he'd really like to be doing more animation and things like this. But again, it's about time and resources. And even though he's using his brother's nice Predator computer, it's very dated. It's from 2017, so he's going to need something that's a little more performative to be able to do really high quality animations and things like that. So he really needs some support getting his channel up, as do I. And definitely we're not beggars, but we are out here trying to assist people and not waste people's time, Ooh, man. Yeah, I don't really go by distance anymore. I just go by time. And I've found that that's what people do. Like I've been really into cycling way in the distant past. It's been a long time. And I've been a little bit into running, like where I'd be able to run pretty fast, but I would limit the running. But there was a point where I could go jogging, running for several miles, with a good pace. It was fun. But I never hugely got into running. Did a little bit of sprinting. I think, I'm always thinking more about hypertrophy and composition, and I just believe that until you really are able to performatively go to that next level or that next step, if you weren't born into a rich family, right, and you really don't have the means, there's some point where you just have to gauge what progress you're making based on the aesthetic component. And I think that's where a lot of people are stuck, right? So instead of being stuck there, I try to encourage people to do their best. Definitely don't be afraid of carbohydrates, but learn how to use fiber and the thermic effect of food, and even more so, how do you expect to gain muscle and increase your metabolic rate, right, if you're not eating carbohydrates? You're not going to do it eating keto, I can tell you that right now. You might be able to do it if you do gluconeogenesis, protein only, but you're going to be walking around in a bad fucking mood all the time. There ain't no ifs, ands, or buts about that. And speaking of butts, you're going to lose your ass, you're going to lose every bit of fat, and you're going to end up keeping fat in your lower abdominal area because you have to get down your loads So when you do these gluconeogenic diets, you have to focus in on either doing a ketogenic load, where you're taking in essentially like a fat bomb, right? Where you're eating more pork and higher fatty meats. When you hit the wall and you've been in gluconeogenesis for a few days, right? Where you're just taking in lean protein, nothing else, water, lean protein. And typically what I found in the past when I'd done this for weeks and even into months at a time is I was able to go in to ever longer cycles where all I would do is just the liquid aspect. I would do protein powder every single hour, right? And I would walk 25 to 30 miles per day, right? So this is very antithetical to any professional bodybuilder who started dabbling with testosterone and understanding, the carbohydrate pump mechanism early on, but they never really challenged themselves to essentially fast and starve and set off autophagy and all this stuff. So it's more body sculpting if you wanted to look at it, getting harder, more cuts at the same time, versus 100% hypertrophic focus. And so that's what we're doing right now. Is I've essentially gone back to my teenage years in the sense of my training, where even at times when I was 26, I kind of went back into this, but I was working full time, young father. When I was about 31, 32, I went into this type of training as well, but I was much leaner, right? And I was eating more fiber, and I was about 180 pounds tops, and that was probably my strongest, when I was even stronger than I was when I was 26 years old, benching 350 for reps, right? So it was pretty insane. I remember being at home, no spotter, my kids running around, dogs running around, and I'm out in the living room working out because I don't want to bust through the old Victorian floorboard in the house that we were renting out, right? Because I've got 335 pounds on the bar, right? And I'm like, okay, I don't want to hurt myself. I don't want to bust through this floorboard. Let's see what we got. And I remember going up and doing 2 reps and feeling, and I actually had to look at the weight because I'm like, is this 275? Like, what's going on here? This is the first time where I had that instant, just this amassment of instant strength, right? To the point where I was handling the weight really well. It felt light, and I'm going, what the fuck's going on here? Like, literally, it was just a surprise to me. And then I did a couple more reps, right? And we're talking about the same set. And here I am, I'm doing 4, 5, and at the 5th and the 6th rep, it's feeling light. The weight is actually feeling light. And I remember realizing, man, I'm gonna need to go hit the gym with this shit. There's no way I'm gonna do this alone in this old Victorian house where the floorboards can pop out. And the same thing was happening with my squats. So it's the point here is I was doing compound lifts. I was doing really what in the beginning started out as really heavy squats, heavy bench, heavy bent over rows, heavy shoulder presses, but I would back off of that a little bit. You'll find that the shoulder presses can really fuck you up. But you'll find that some people, just the way their body's put together, excel more in the military press, right? And their bench is usually a little weaker, right? So you really want to find that angle where you excel, And I would venture to say that more endomorphs would probably versus more mesomorphic people. Like, I think mesomorphs are probably better in the bench type position. For me, the position that I preferred was an incline bench press, barbell bench press. In fact, when I go into a gym, even these days, though it's been a long time, I'm always looking for the incline bench press first. Like that's the one area that really just it hits the front delts, hits the triceps, obviously hits the upper portion of your chest, and it just and even the lats when you're talking about an antagonistic stabilization, right? So I really like that exercise quite a bit. The one exercise that's going to make your chest grow like crazy is the dumbbell fly, right? And we're talking heavy dumbbell flies. I got a call, so I got to get going, but we will talk to you soon.